It's the sick show. It's the sick show.
It's the sick show.
Hey, welcome everybody. Hey, so lately I've been thinking a lot about just who who I am, who I'm becoming, how I've evolved over time, and just thinking about exploring that intricate journey of moral development and how we learn right from wrong and how those values shape our lives and society. I think it's really interesting to see how, a couple people can grow up literally in the same family and possess different a different moral compass. So it makes me wonder, is this an innate thing? Is this something that we are just born with or something that develops over time? Is it something that we learn, that nature versus nurture, or vice versa? You know, uh, just looking at it from that lens of how we develop the sense of right and wrong, and how this world sees it so differently. How someone here in the middle of Indiana, in a small town, how their morality can be so similar to someone who lives in New York City, or someone who lives in London, or somewhere in the Congo, and we still have this same, or at least very similar, moral compass about right and wrong. These universal thoughts of the right and wrong in the world, and what it means to be a good human being. And this has really been digging at me here lately, and I don't know if it's part of the presidential campaign that's going on, and how much mudslinging there is with that, it's kind of drawn this up. I'm sure that that has a part of it, but I really think it's so interesting to me, and I kind of want to look at it going from early childhood and the influences of that. um, I want to talk a little bit about nature versus nurture. um, maybe even dig in a little bit into morality development, and I think those all kind of go together. So as I'm rattling on here, um, I think they all come together, but especially in the adolescent age, with peer pressure, moral dilemmas, and that moral relativism, and just kind of going into the philosophy of it. I may have time digging that today. I'm not sure, but I want to discuss how they can be applied. All these ideals can be applied to real world ethical dilemmas. Um, and I just want to I want to explore the relationship between morality and religion too. I'm not sure if I want to do that just by myself, but that's something I'm really thinking about lately. Is you know how do all these things just kind of align, and where do they come from? And right now somebody's going, well, they're all in the Bible. Well, you're right. And thinking about how that was written, you know, thousands of years ago, and developed over thousands of years, um, and the interpretation of it developed over thousands of years as well. So I don't know that I want to dive into that by myself, because I'm afraid where it goes. I want someone that understands, knows, and understands biblical text, maybe even other religious texts better than me. I don't know them very well. Um, my my whole my whole studying is a quick search of a certain passage or a certain um, piece from it, just to kind of fact check somebody on Facebook, just to check and see if they're holding themselves accountable for just cherry picking from there. But sorry, I don't mean to get off on a tangent already. Here we are, less than 5 minutes in, and I'm on a tangent. But I don't know. I want to get into that a little bit, and I think about it a lot. Just this morality in the modern world, and how the morality changes over time within societies, within cultures, and to just dive into that, um, how it's kind of came about with me. As a young boy, my mother was a guiding force in the formation of my own reality, definitely my reality, but of my own morality. And even today, I still draw guidance from the lessons I learned from her. And there were others too. It's not like she's the lone person, that's standing there on the back porch yelling my name, Scott, that I can hear all the way across town. But she was certainly a big part of that. I still think about, what her thoughts would be today about some of the things I do, I say, how I approach things. And, but no one else comes close to the weight she carried in my development. By example, her life just emulated service to others. I honestly don't remember a time when my mom wasn't thinking, was not, wasn't, boy, the Hartford City's coming out of me today, boys and girls. But just how her life emulated service to others. And honestly, I just don't remember a time when my mother was not thinking of someone else's needs, wants, or feelings. And I see that in many others. I see that in my wife. I see that in my mother-in-law, my sister-in-laws, my own daughters, my sister-in-laws. And just just thinking about how those people serve others, and I see it in men in my life too. Don't get me wrong, but specifically with those, my aunt Carol, my aunt Susie, just thinking of others, their needs, and even in their worst of times and their worst of moments, I just believe this dedication to selflessness um, is is a trait of a wonderful person. Number one, it's not necessarily pigeonholed into just women. Um, I think there's plenty of men that are servants as well, but I also think that there's a nurturing piece that women possess that I certainly don't. Men, if some of you do, good for you. I've met women that don't. I get it, but I think by and large, women possess a much larger nurturing component, and that is evolutionary. It is. It is something that was required as humans evolved over time into the beings we are today. And regardless of what your thoughts are on that, we have evolved as a species. We continue to. Um, I would say in the next 50 years, just the shape of our body is going to change dramatically into this hump shaped figure as we, hover over our phone, reading text messages and scrolling through TikToks. By the way, I don't have TikTok. I thought it was interesting. One of my friends, I was reading through her page today, her Facebook page, and she mentioned to someone, I don't have TikTok. They like posted a link to a TikTok, and she was like, oh, I don't have TikTok. So Tracy Ball, she is a non TikToker, and thought that was really interesting. But anyway, so I firmly believe that, you know, back to my mom. My mom died of giving. She continued to give. She died of a result of multiple strokes. And folks, I urge you to understand what a stroke looks like for people. Um, know what those signs are. I'm very blessed to be married to someone who has a very clear understanding of what different things look like. And there are times when my speech starts slurring and I've got a headache, and my wife's like, "Are you having a stroke?" No, I'm just I'm exhausted or whatever. But know those things. Look into it. Um, but she died as a result of multiple strokes in 2005, and I think a big component of that was just her complete, utter focus on being concerned for others and not having a concern for herself and for her own health. And my journey and moral development was altered through the experience of losing my mother at the age of 30. And I, I highly encourage everyone here to uh, dig deep into caring for yourself. I'm a big self care person. I believe we have to care for ourselves. There has to be a selfish component that we possess so that we can care enough for ourselves to care for others. And when you fail to care for yourself, you're going to fail to care for others in doing so, just retroactively or whatever the word would be. Uh, Jocelyn, please let me know what that word probably should have been. But she was never one to complain, not at least in front of me or my siblings. And even during our last conversation, she was more concerned about me taking time away from work than her own health. There she is on a hospital bed in the emergency room at Ball Hospital, and she was so concerned about me taking time away from work just to be there and support her and to show my love. That she was focused on that. The last thing she should have been focused on, and you know my I realize that my perception of right and wrong, it was not static. It's not static. It will never will be, but it's ever evolving as a person as my life experiences provided me learning opportunities. And there's a quote I remember, and I think it was one of my ethics books that I read in my master's program. Morality is at the very least the effort to guide one's conduct by reason. I want to read that again. Read that to you again. I've written it down. It's something I've kept with me a long time. But morality is at the very least the effort to guide one's conduct by reason. So thinking about that and how we also think about this idea of perception is one's reality. As your perception changes, you learn, you grow, you experience things. Reality changes, and the byproduct of these changes is ultimately morality. The basis of my moral compass, my mother, was still teaching even through her death. And I'm very appreciative of that. I'm very fortunate to have had a wonderful example of what a caring human being um, looked like. And learning what is socially acceptable, I think it varies from culture to culture. I don't think it, I know it. I just know it does. And, you know, since the, um, since the early times, of the earliest philosophers, the enlightened observers that have known the conception of right and wrong, they have also known that it differs from culture to culture. But this doesn't imply that one culture is right or the other is wrong. I mean, who decides? Do the morality police exist? You're damn right they do. Just, post something on Facebook real quick. See how quick they come running. Sirens blaring, lights flashing. You can't say that. I mean, they certainly do exist. And but can one culture claim moral superiority? I don't. Can they? I mean, seriously. Now, granted, there are you know, some subcultures out there um, that I would certainly think have a skewed moral compass. They're reading it differently. But as we search for answers, one thing becomes clear: that morality is a complex issue that seems to morph as cultures within society come into contact with one another. So, when we are just looking at this very sterile whatever culture, it comes into contact with this other sterile whatever culture. The two of them are different from one another. There are going to be conflicts. There's going to be compromise if they're going, one's going to um, integrate into the other. if they're not, then we're looking at a lot of bloodshed to make a decision. You think about our wars. And I think back, it made me think instantly of World War II, and that was definitely a morality conflict for sure. Um, People could argue the Civil War, certainly there was a morality conflict there. If you don't think it is, you need to dig a little deeper. Uh, and please, let's sit down and talk about that. But as we search for answers, um, these things, there are universal truths that do exist. And um, two things plus two things equals four things. That happens. Now, I heard recently Terrence Howard on the Joe Rogan show talked about one times one is not one, it's two. And he got into a very in depth debate with a mathematician later on, also on the Joe Rogan show. And I highly encourage you go listen to those. Go search out the Terrence Howard, very interesting podcast with Joe Rogan. But later on, another very smart person, I cannot remember his name, also came on the Rogan show to debate with Terrence Howard about his thoughts and this idea of one times one not being one, it being two. And Terrence Howard had some really interesting things that he was sharing, but um, no one's arguing that two plus two is four. Perception does create disparity amongst people with different backgrounds. One's environment, exposure to truths, one's trusted circle of advisors, manifest. You know, not only are society's values important, but so are its religious beliefs, its factual beliefs, and its physical environment. Those things, this cultural relativism, although flawed, opens the door to question right and wrong. With this in mind, we continue to justify our own morality based on the schema of the life we've experienced, all these different things that come into play and drive our sense of what is real. So, it, how does that all come about? If someone says that something is morally wrong, well, he does need reasons, and if his reasons are legitimate, then other people should accept their force. I mean, if they're legitimate, if they're fact based, if they're based on universal truths, universal facts, universal truths, undisputed, there needs to be an ability to accept that force of understanding. People struggle with that. There is there's this idea out there that even when someone is faced with being wrong, knowing they're wrong, they still have to defend their ground. It blows me away, our inability in this culture, in the American culture, that many people, and I mean many, it's more than half, in my life experience anyway. I don't have a study. Sorry, I didn't do my research. Oh my God, we can get into a whole thing about that. But just knowing that people, when people believe they are right, even when faced with a undeniable truth that proves they are wrong, they struggle to accept that. It's just, it's very difficult for me to understand that. And heck, I may have been that person at one time. Heck, I don't know. I don't remember it. I I don't remember a time when I was. I feel like I'm someone who, when someone brings me factual realities, universal truths that just are undisputable, two plus two is four, I'm willing to listen and to accept and to back down from my knowledge base and say, huh, wasn't aware of that. Thanks for sharing that with me. You know, um, on something like that. I can remember Shelley Bergeron. She was my supervising teacher when I started, right before I started teaching, my student teaching coming out of Ball State. And she was my supervising teacher. It was a third grade classroom over in Muncie. And I used seen and saw wrong every time. Heck, I still struggle with it now. But she had to bring that to my attention. She felt so strongly that she had a future educator that she needed to make sure I corrected that. And I'm so appreciative. I don't think Shelly listens to my podcast. If you know her, tell her I said thank you. Please share that with me, or share that opportunity to tell her I said thank you for correcting me. By the time I became a teacher, a year, less than a year later, um, I was working on it desperately. I had my wife and my kids, on board, telling them to call me out. When I got into my second year of teaching, Laura Lee helped me with that. She was my accountability person when it came to seen and saw, and still to this day, I would imagine that if Laura saw me doing doing something and talking and heard me use those words improperly, no matter what the company is, she would correct me. And I appreciate that because I want to be the best version of me as possible. That's part of my moral compass is that, you know, I firmly believe we're always supposed to get better. We're supposed to improve. But if something is wrong, now it's not morality, but it's along the lines of right and wrong. And I want someone that is willing to correct me. My wife has corrected me multiple times on things I just didn't know. Uh, Sometimes I wonder if she just assumes that knowledge that I'm just supposed to know it, and maybe I just don't. And when she brings it to my attention, I correct it. I do my best. I'm not perfect by any means. I still have, real dumbass attacks, but sorry, Jennifer, but I'm working on it. I'm willing to own it. And, is there getting back to the morality piece? I'm sorry. 20 minutes in, there it is again, But, is there no possibility that the person would not be able to justify the reason? Um, Verbally or in writing, but know by experience that their reasoning is just. My own judgment then becomes the end all be all. Uh, I don't know that. Um, just because my life experience tells me so doesn't make it right. Growing up in small town Indiana, a lot of racial slurs being thrown around where as a very young person it was just the norm. As a young white person in little Hartford City, Indiana, there were terms thrown around that it was the norm. So a lot of words were used, I used, and had no idea of the weight that they possessed. And I've shared on here before that, at 16, uh, hearing my parents use racial slurs, I couldn't take it anymore. I'd gained an understanding of the world. I'd grown. I'd changed. My development through adolescence had given me this. I was at the dawn of my own individuality, of my self awareness, and realized this isn't right. This is wrong. There are people who are hurt by these terms, and I remember hearing my mother use something. I can remember exactly what it was. And I told her, I said, Mom, I can't hear you say that. You're not that person. You're a beautiful person. And my dad was there. I said, I can't take it that you use that word. I don't believe that you believe that. I don't believe that you're a racist person. and you're using that term, and you're a beautiful person, and that's such an ugly term that should never be used. And it was interesting. I never heard him say it again. Here was a 16-year-old boy who had a different view of the world, a different view of reality, that was correcting this person that had been their moral compass. And she made that change. Whether it was for me or whether it was for the right, for doing it for the rightness of this world, the rightness of the world. Either way, she made that change, and so did my father. And I never heard him use it again. And I can remember a couple years before my dad passed, so he was 80 years old, him telling me that he heard someone use the word that I didn't like. And he told him that was just an ugly word and it shouldn't be used. Man, how proud of a moment that was for me to hear my dad all those years later letting me know that it was still resonating within him. That's a very touching moment for me to know that I had helped these people that had helped me so deeply, made such an impact on me, and guided me. They were my morality police. That I didn't turn the tables on them. That's not what I'm getting at, but I was able to return that. I was able to return that favor. I was able to return that check and balance, that they had done such a good job. My parents did an incredible job. And I work very hard trying to have that same kind of impact on my own children. And I think I have. I know I have. And I try to continue to do that for others as well. But boy, what a confidence boost to a young person for their teacher, their guide, their mentor, their parents, to take it to heart and to hear them and to react. That's the example I had. Those were the people that I had as an example. And I realized just now, I'm today years old. I'm to now years old. I'm realizing they're still impacting me from what they did 34 years ago and beyond and since. Gosh, guys, I told you this is like therapy. You know, 2 years ago, a few years ago, God, it was more than that. Oh my gosh, man, I haven't been teaching for a while. This must have been, gosh, 6 years ago or more. But I had, in my class, we were talking about just humans as moral agents and responsibility for choice, and the idea that they had a duty to make choices in a morally responsible way. This ideal is frightening. And years ago, I asked all my 8th grade class, 160 kids, if someone were to steal a candy bar, I asked this question: if someone steals a candy bar, has a crime been committed? All of my students replied with a yes, except for two. Two of the kids in different classes replied, not if they didn't get caught. After a discussion, we talked about the idea that, if 55 is the speed limit and if I'm going 56, is that breaking the law? Well, yes. Nope, not if you didn't get caught. If I'm going 90, nope, not if you didn't get caught. Let's say I were to steal your candy bar from you. It's in your hand and I take it from you and you don't get it back. I take it and run, and I go eat it to never be seen again. Has a crime been committed? Nope, not if you didn't get caught. If I take all your money and I go spend it, and I spend it on, going to the fair and getting cotton candy and elephant ears, you'll never see it again. It's not like you can get it back from me because I ate them. Has a crime been committed? Nope, not if you didn't get caught. Well, I asked them to go home and speak to their parents and ask them the same question to see how they reply. Next day, those students came to class. One of them, it was a boy. He said, Mr. Schick, I want to apologize. I talked to my mom, and she corrected me. She told me I was wrong, that it doesn't matter if you get caught, that a crime was committed. If you do something wrong, even if you don't get caught, it's still wrong. But the other, who was a girl, came into my room and promptly called me a liar. My mom said if it ain't stealing, if you don't get caught. It ain't stealing if you don't get caught. You lied, Mr. Schick. My mom told me. Rather than be creating a scene, I asked her, I said, okay, just have a seat. Let's get started. And we went on with our lesson. And I never checked her on it. I'm not gonna override mom at 13, 14 years old. Good old Mr. Schick was not gonna override mom and dad on morality. That's not my job as a teacher. We're not the moral police. At least I didn't think so. But there's certainly a lot of hidden curriculum that's taught in the classroom, and I'd love to have that conversation too. And I think we probably will before it's all over with. But I asked her to sit down, and her justification was it was legitimized in her world. So, that example exposes flaws within, that subjectivism in ethics and morality. And 159 students all agreed that taking the candy bar from a store was stealing, and all of their moral perceptions were verified through the lens the world had provided them with. The trusted circle that was guiding them had given them the culturally accepted morality. But that one student was clearly being raised in an environment that did not view morality as more than 99% of the population viewed this. That just is what it is. And we're faced with that on a daily basis. We see it all the time. You see it all the time. Whether it be something small or something large, you see it all around you every day. Somebody not returning the cart all the way up, to where it goes, either the cart return or up to the front of the store, or, even the overachievers who take it inside. I usually get it about, 50 feet away and give it a good shove up towards the door, as long as there's not people walking around. If I'm at a busy store, I don't give it that shove. But if I'm at like Needlers in Hartford City, I'll take it. I'm about 50 feet, maybe 30 away from the little walk in front of the store. And I just give it a little shove. Just see if I can get it up there without it crashing into the side of the building and, creating some sort of bang, damaging either the store or the cart. I do my best to just, give it a little poof. And I watch it. Man, when that thing gets up there just right, dude, I'm like man, I strut across that parking lot back to my car. Jennifer, I know she's like sitting there going, he is so dumb. But to me, I'm a freaking champion. Anyhow, so we all have that trusted circle that guides us and gives us that culturally acceptable morality, ethics. But there's always going to be that one. There's going to be that one. And this disagreement in belief exists in various forms. My students may have been right, but there was no way I could challenge that one girl. And you're not going to be able to challenge those people in your life. Those ones My mom and dad were an exception. They were willing to go, oh shit, that is bad. I've been doing this my whole life. I'm a real asshole, you know? But there's always going to be that one. It doesn't matter what you say. I mean, dude, just get on social media and look at the way people talk to one another on there and how strongly they hold in their beliefs. Prove it. You can't. You can't prove it. You can't prove it. At least not to them. It, in society, then the ones who ultimately is society ultimately the ones who decide morality? You know, I mean, if my one student agrees and there's no way to argue her stand, uh, I would have no way to argue with her that her stance that not getting caught means no crime. Her moral compass and those in her trusted circle has verified with her that that's okay. So is society then the one who ultimately decides morality? Is it mob rule? I don't know if it's mob rule. We're talking about a very small percentage, it's less than 1% that can't seem to grasp what the rest of the team is doing. I mean, we all had that person on a team that just, I heard one coach call them they were drill busters. But I cannot and will not support that. So I'm not a mob rule person. If that were the case, change would never occur. The voice of the minority, the needs of the few would be silenced and homogenized. A homogenized world would exist, and I can't do that. My black hat self, you hear me talk about the different colored hats. My black hat self desires subjective morality that humanity needs to be challenged. Isn't wasn't that the whole idea of Martin Luther posting, his grievances? I mean, the whole Protestant church is based on that. But heaven forbid, oh man, no pun intended, that we challenge something that is written in the Bible, the King James Bible, by the way. Um, Sorry, I'm gonna probably get some shade for that, but I I continually challenge these ideas. I continually push the envelope because I am a truth seeker. I am a right fighter. I want to know the truth. I don't want to know just the universal understanding. I want to know the universal truths. And um, if if humanity needs to be challenged, then one's personal agenda may be the voice of a select few who can become um, agents of societal change. So just because society deems certain beliefs and norms as acceptable does not always mean they're true. Moral thinking and moral conduct are a matter of weighing reasons and being guided by them. When are we under duress if it's referred to as our consciousness weighing heavy on our mind? We seek to locate our particular moral principles and a general view of the moral life that orders our principles and tells us how to decide when they conflict. Hmm. Although my family didn't go to church, not often. I mean, we went to Bethel Center, and I can remember going with my Aunt Betty to church, and I went with my cousins to church and to church camp and different things. But I think I believe I was raised as a Christian, and I knew right from wrong. My father was more open about his questions with the Bible than my mom, um, which interestingly enough, I just found out. I don't know, within the past year that my great grandpa Toby was a minister. I thought that was really interesting. Here in Hartford City, there was a church down by Hoover Park, but you know, my father was a lot more open and very openly challenged ideas. Um, and although I question the validity of the stories and written scripture. I do believe that there is value in the teachings of the Bible, as I do with other religions as well. I think there's some universal truths that come out with all of them. I can remember when I was 26, I worked with a devout Christian, and Don and another salesman named Rich. They were hammering on about Muhammad Ali for his draft dodging during the Vietnam War, and I asked why should he not have the right to his religious beliefs? And his reply has always stuck with me: because they are wrong. There is only one way to get to heaven, and that is through Jesus Christ. The Bible tells me so. And Don was and is my friend, and I respect him and love him as a human being and as a friend. And I'm not going to challenge someone on their personal faith. I'm not. My moral compass tells me that Ali was right. He has a right to do that. Um, Not that it's the way I would have chosen it. That's not what my choice would have been. Kneeling for the anthem. It's a right. Someone has that right. It's not my choice, but there's something in their path in their life that has told them that's what's needed to challenge the world that they're in, the world that they're fighting to find the best opportunity for their life in. It's not something I do, but I have I don't believe I have a right to tell them not to. We can get into a whole big thing about it. Things I don't agree with doesn't mean that someone else shouldn't be able to. Someone else should be able to challenge. Who am I? The challenge police? Is that what I am? I'm the challenge police. Oh, you can't challenge this. You can't do that because I say, in my world, it doesn't. I'm not that person. I am, and I'm not a pacifist either. So don't take it as something that it's not. There are things that it's not my job. I haven't experienced that. I haven't experienced it. I'm man, I'm getting worked up, people. uh, but you know, I believe in the right for man to pursue his faith as he sees fit. I believe that. I believe that a person has the right to pursue faith as he sees fit or she sees fit. According to the divine command theory, God decrees what is right and wrong. Well, but is there an all world acceptable view of God's word? Is there an all world acceptable view of it? We all know that there's not. There's a war being fought right now over in the Middle East over a strip of land. Is it really about a strip of land? Ask yourself that question. You know the answer. Do we get to pick and choose what is acceptable as culturally usable and what is pushed to the side? If that's the case, how can this theory be valid? Does society really want to answer that? How do we explain something that can't be seen, touched, smelled, or heard? According to the divine command theory, nothing is good or bad except when God's thinking makes it so. Let's say that again. According to the divine command theory, nothing is good or bad except when God's thinking makes it so. Okay? I'm gonna let each of you roll that around. Those are things that um, are at a very personal level. Ultimately, morality is fluid, ever changing, and morphing. My moral compass leads me and guides me through my personal and professional life. That's my moral compass. As you develop your own, and hopefully it never stops developing, you're always learning, always gathering new information, you're experiencing new things in the world. I've been through a couple of, I was in a rollover accident in 2019, and to the point to where I had a surreal moment, and I would love to go over that in some other podcast. But a surreal moment, things slowed down. My, we're talking about something that happened within seconds, less than five, probably 5 seconds, I would guess, that felt like minutes. Slowed down, self talk happening. Like, I very vividly remember my truck spinning prior to the rollover, then the quiet as the truck was in a flip off the ground. And me thinking, what the hell is happening? Trying to figure out what was going on. And then as the roof of my truck hits the ground and my head hits the roof of the inside roof of my truck, and I can hear my neck compress, and I said to myself, huh, this is exactly how very vivid, folks. Huh, this is how I die. Not a feeling of scared shitlessness or anything else. Very peaceful thought. This is how I die. Then it all stopped, and I feel myself laying on top of some things in my vehicle, and I feel something drip on my face, and I realize it's mud. I hear my truck running, and I think to myself, if this thing's on fire or, something's going to go bad, I need to shut my truck off. And I reached up, I stood up and reached across from the passenger seat over to the key, turned my truck off. And in that moment, I chuckled and said, I'm not a paraplegic. Thank God. Did a very quick self-assessment. Checked myself over. I looked down, and I don't have bones sticking out anywhere. Don't think I'm bleeding anywhere at the moment. And I realize I'd lost my left shoe. And in that moment, I laugh out loud, and I say to myself, this is how people lose one shoe. I mean, if you have ever seen one shoe laying out on the street, right? In my head, that's all I could think about. I prairie dog up out of my truck, and I see a former student making a phone call. And I say, are you calling 911? She said, yeah. I said, thank you. There were things learned in that rollover that changed my thoughts on a lot of things in this life. Not all of them, but certainly a few. It's at this crossroads that one must separate personal and, personal and professional decision making to ensure the accepted code of morality and ethics come into play. I know that sounds weird, but I was starting to seriously think about life and how fragile it is. Ended up on the phone after, I hear sirens, everything else. I had this girl call her mother so she can calm down. Then I asked her to call my wife. Got Jennifer on the phone, was talking to Jennifer's fire trucks, and all the EMTs showed up. And I remember one of the Bacons was preparing to cut my windshield out, him and some other firefighters. And thank you guys for taking good care of me that day. I really do appreciate it. But as they're cutting me out, I'm on the phone with Jennifer. I said, "Hey, everything's gonna be fine. Just meet me at the emergency room at Ball, and I'll see you there." So she was in Muncie at the time. I said, "Don't come to Blackford County. Just meet me at Ball Hospital. I'm gonna take a ride in the ambulance." I said, "Hey, baby, I gotta get off here. They're getting ready to cut my windshield out so they can get me out of the truck." I don't think she realized. I haven't alluded to her at that point, you know, how bad this accident was. That my truck was laying on its side and I'd been in a rollover, and not just a rollover. I mean, we flipped. I was airborne in this thing, and um, but there was things happening in my brain that changed how I approach life. As an educator, um, and at that time I was still teaching, actively teaching. I was kind of transitioning into administration, but as an educator, I'd chosen to serve the education of others, and I was I was entrusting the vision of those who had come before me. And although I'm acting selflessly, but I was also selfishly plowing ahead, utilizing others' experience to gain knowledge for my betterment. And don't we do that in life in general? So there in my professional life, I was doing that, and I have this awesome, and I use it as awesome because it was an awesome event. Um, those are things that start to change and impact my life and ultimately others. And everyone knows that people sometimes seem to act altruistically, but if we look deeper, we may find that something else is going on. And I call this the grind due to the grueling process. And I'm not the only one that calls it the grind. I did not coin that phrase. Thank you, Angela Duckworth. Or is it Duckwall? I can't remember her name, but read that word grit. But I call this the grind due to the grueling process. It's very difficult, uncomfortable, and tiresome. And in our learning, um, that yield, that harvest of knowledge, information, and experience is well worth the work. The lessons that are learned early on from my mother led me to this place I am right now, and I continue to service others as an agent of change. And folks, that's the message of today. Challenge those ideas. Challenge yourself. Challenge yourself to stop just accepting the status quo. You can do better. You can. You can achieve more. You can give more. You challenge that. If somebody's doing wrong, if you see something wrong, if somebody's mocking someone openly, they need to be corrected. We should not be validating people who mock others openly and by just being passive about it. As um, a teacher, as a school administrator, my job was to make sure others weren't just passively allowing wrong in this world. And if we're just allowing people to openly be mock, to openly be abusive, to and even on a private level, just doing wrong, it's our job to call them out on that bullshit. Can't be passive about it. You may think, but it doesn't affect me. Yeah, it probably will eventually. Think about those lessons you learned early on, and hopefully you're not that 1%er or less than 1%er. Hopefully you're not that kid that was in my class, and hopefully she has learned since being 13 that she can do better in this life, and that when you steal a candy bar, it is a crime. It's theft. I don't know if it's technically theft. I'm not a lawyer, but it's wrong. Don't take something that's not yours. Don't do it. Be a good person. Go after it. Get better. Keep climbing that rope, people. You're going to get some scars. You're going to get some blisters. It's going to hurt. You're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to wish to God you never even started it. But go after it, man. Be the best you can be. Love y'all. Everybody have a great day. Thanks for listening in.